Hello, good evening. This is me, Preeti Chaudhary, here on an episode of Veteran Spotlight on a nice Monday evening at 9 p.m., the usual time. Folks, a warm welcome to everybody that is going to be tuning in. So, before we actually start the evening, I will quickly bring you up to speed in terms of everything that is happening with LinkedIn Local India in the near future. There's loads of stuff happening, loads of knowledge sharing sessions, loads of webinars, and loads of activities to sort of help everyone during these difficult times. So, with that, let me quickly put you in the perspective of why a veteran spotlight. So, this initiative of mine is totally about shining the spotlight on our veteran community that has done everything for our country. They've given their best years, their all basically, and some of them even, the supreme sacrifice. So, what happens is when they are transitioning and when they have transitioned, there's very less visibility, and the corporates do not know about this existing talent pool. So, via this veteran spotlight, we want to shine the spotlight on this existing pool of very talented and amazing bunch of people that are there to act as a bridge between the corporates and the veteran community and bring both of them together. So, with that, let me start today's episode. And with me in the spotlight today is Probal DasGupta. Let me bring him onto the stream and then we can get started. So, once again, welcome to one and all on this episode of Veteran Spotlight via LinkedIn Live with me, your host, Preeti Chaudhary. Good evening,
Hello,
Prabal.
Preeti.
How are you
Hello,
today?
Preeti. Good evening to you. I'm very well. How are you doing?
I am good and I'm looking forward to this evening of chat with you in terms of learning about you as a person, who you are, where you're coming from, where you're going, and what exactly have you done. So, basically, to set a tone to this conversation, I would talk about three different aspects of your life, Prabal, with your permission. Them being your
Sure.
very early formative, thank you, formative years, and then the time wherein you were studying to be an army person, a forces person, and then when you decided to hang up your boots for the suit. So, very distinct three buckets of your life thus far, ending up to today when you are in the spotlight with me. So, to help me understand that, Proval, please tell me where you are from, your kind of family background, your parents, siblings, and the entire story of where it all began. Over to you, Proval.
Thank you. Thank you, Preeti. Thanks for having me here. Appreciate it. And I really look forward to the conversation today. And so you kicked off things from early days of early life, etc. And so I was born in Kolkata and of course never lived there. My father was in the armed forces earlier. He was a veteran who had seen action in the 1965 India-Pakistan War, and he had also transitioned after some years in the army, and he had transitioned to become a banker. I spent my early years in Madhya Pradesh. I spent time in Jabalpur in the early uh, part of my schooling. That was when I went to a school called Christchurch School. It's an old school in Jabalpur. That's where I spent my early primary school days. Still have very fond memories there. And Jabalpur used to be an old cantonment town and continues to be so. So Jabalpur was the first I remember. Of course, there were several other places that we lived in, but as far as my schooling was concerned, Indore Daily College was where I went to boarding. And you know, it was a fabulous time in boarding in Indore. Daily College is an old school, over 100 years old today, closing in on 150 very soon. One of the oldest public schools that we have in India, and it was a great time of learning various skills. And one of the things that I remember in school that I learned was life skills. You do learn your academics. You will learn your academics, otherwise you'll never get through standard 12. But one of the things that you learn is your life skills, which includes your ability to negotiate issues, challenges, your ability to lead, your ability to do various things, whether it's sports or your debates or your writing or your speaking or your academics, and the ability to be to face up to different challenges, the exposure that you get, and various things. And a boarding school certainly provided me that. One of the things, if I may, if you allow me, and I just one of those things that you learn, and one of the things that I've learned over the years is that the best way to absorb life is through anecdotes, through stories, and through learnings from real life interactions with people who you meet in life. So and today, I mean, I just step out of this and say that today I just had a book published some time back. The reason why I say that, why I bring it here, is very early in life, and this is something that is a learning that I had. Early on in life, I remember the first article I wrote for the school magazine was rejected because it was not good enough. So and they said, no, you have to work a lot on this. So and the funny part is like today I have a book behind, and I've been writing for a few years. Uh, and the other thing is that I remember scoring 100% percentile on math, and I could never become a mathematician because I was never good at it. So in school you do things, you're not meant to be those, but you retain memories which are fond memories, funny memories, and you become something else, and you think we used to be taught Sanskrit. Sanskrit those days used to be a subject in the CBSE curriculum, and I remember scoring marks in Sanskrit and math, and neither of those did I pursue in later life. So those are things that you remember. Then the teachers that you interact with again form a very important part of your life. Your parents are, of course, the people who really are your guiding lights, but the teachers who you interact with, who you spend a lot of time with, and in boarding you do spend a lot of time with your teachers. I had my English teacher, Mr. Ahmed Ansari, who would, I remember asking him when he was the one who would expose me to speaking in public, in debates and various public interactions, etc. So one of the things I remember, and this is something that today I feel it's important for us to bestow on the next generation as well, is that early on, and this is something that my father also used to say, that do the things the way you want to do it, because those come naturally to you. If you have a style, retain it. If you have a method, retain it. There is nothing called as this is not the way it is done. I think that is something that I learned early in life, where I was told that when you want to go and speak in public, do it the way you want. There's nothing called as the right technique, and we know that today. Technology disruption is one of the things that teaches us that there is no status quo in the way you do things. You can only challenge status quo and attain something different when you know that you don't stop yourself at thinking out aloud. Otherwise, you kind of get into one kind of things, and you're not able to challenge the status quo, and you're not able to discover something in you. So I think that's something
Hold
that came on early in life itself as a learning. Yeah,
hold
go
on
on.
to that
Sorry.
thought because not a problem. I was just going to say that just a couple of reminders to everybody that's tuned in today, who's watching us, listening to us. Please put in your questions and comments in the comments box of this LinkedIn Live, which is just under the live stream, because we will be taking up live question and answers at the end of this conversation with Probal. And quickly to say something to everyone, a little bit of knowledge here. Jabalpur happens to be my city. So when Probal says he studied in Christchurch Boys School, I know exactly what he's talking about because that is just 2 kilometers from my home. So people, I have promised Probal earlier today that I'm going to go and get a picture of the school for him, just to take him back to the time when he used to be a 7, 8 year old kid studying here, So that is something which I'm looking forward to do in the coming days. Another thing that I would like to bring out in the open here, like Praval has already mentioned that he's an author. I would just like to point out that he has written a book which is Watershed, China in 1967, basically about a forgotten incident in the Indo-China, Indo-Sino relations. So we will be touching upon all of those things in a little while. But once again, a reminder, please let those questions and comments keep coming in. We will be taking them up. And with that, Proval, I'll bring you back to a little bit more of your family. Obviously, your
Yeah.
father was already in the forces. So, sometimes children do follow in the footsteps, sometimes they chart out. I want to talk about your relationship with your parents. How about your siblings? Are there any other brothers and sisters? And what was it like growing up in that army sort of an environment as a Fauji kid along with your siblings? And what were y'all doing? Fighting a lot? What was going on in that respect? Over to you.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. So yes, I had my younger brother was much younger than me, way much younger. So uh, uh, it was growing up of where we would play together, and having played with people of my age group, he turned out to be a much better sportsman than I am. And and of course we had a great relationship. We still do, and he's been advising me on several things that have been, whether it's on the book, on other things. So yes, with sibling, you have a great relationship, and I still do. And with parents, it is as I said, they've been guiding lights. My father served in the forces. My mom was at home, and so we she took care of all of us. My dad was an inspiration. In fact, I dedicated the book to him. Uh, and also, one of the things I earlier touched upon is the ability to ability to let you think. And that's something that free thinking is something that he, instilled in us, which is what really spurs you on. You're not channelized into a particular way of thinking or a field of thinking. Free thinking, think what you can do, what you can achieve. The world's your oyster, or the sky's the limit. So that's a learning early on, and a great relationship where I would also hear stories from him, and those stories that I heard growing up did form the bedrock of the narrative of the book that came on later. Because what you hear in childhood, the stories that you hear in childhood, stay with you. Like you mentioned about Christchurch, I told you earlier that I still remember the building or the road that passes through the buildings on either side in my mind's eye, because history is much more generous when it's older, and that's how you retain. If you ask me where I went yesterday, these days you don't go anywhere. But what all I did yesterday, I probably won't be able to give you a correct recounting of all of that. But if you ask me what I did in 1983 when Kapil Dev was lifting the World Cup, I can tell you what we did. And so those are memories that you retain and you grow up with and you get inspired by. So that's how it was, family, childhood, and the school and people around.
Lovely. That is so nice to hear. And I must say, Proval, early on, you were sort of a very independent and self sufficient child because you sort of moved around with your family in your early years. Then you went and lived by yourself in that boarding school. So now I want to touch upon this famous oldest boarding school of Madhya Pradesh, my state too. So I take great
Yeah.
pride in anything and everything MP. So I would like to know what was life living in that boarding school. How was the atmosphere? Did you ever get bullied, or was it a nice family, homely atmosphere? Did you miss your family, and were you sort of at peace there, or it was a lot of chaos? So take us through that because I am really interested in knowing. I've never lived in
Sure.
a boarding through
Sure.
my life, so I would like to
Sure.
know a bit more. Over to
Sure.
you.
Sure. Sure. No, it was wonderful. There. You go through all kinds of phases in your boarding school where you don't get the privileges when you're not senior enough, but you grow. Those days, it's a rough life at times, but it's wonderful. You learn so much. You make friends for life. And as I said, you have teachers who are available to guide you on your math sums or your essays or some homework that you need to do at 8:30 or 9 in the night, when they would drop by and tell you whether you have completed. And that's something that I really cherish, that people were there all the time. I learned a lot of things about how to respect others' opinions. You learn to live with differences. That's one of the greatest things. And as I said earlier, what you learn in school are your life skills. Academics, though, you will get through your standard 12, so don't worry about that. It's the life skills that you learn. It's your leadership skills, the ability to live in a society, live with the differences that you have with people. How do you cope with competition? How do you cope with failure more than success? How do you everybody knows how to cope with success, and most people would. There are also other things about it, but how to cope with setbacks, how to cope with challenges, how to cope with difficulty in overcoming things, and how to cope with various aspects of life that you learn. And daily college and boarding taught me a lot of that. uh, and so yes, and the exposure to various activities, extracurricular activities, and how to sort of balance all these things in a day's work. How do you do all of that? How do you plan your day? What happens? What happens if the plan doesn't go well? And that's another plan. That's a plan to cater for a plan that doesn't go well. And sometimes you just go out there and do things. Sometimes it's impromptu. What do you do when you're faced with issues, when you're faced with various things, and the relationships that you develop with people? They're absolutely candid, they're wonderful, and they are very strong, and they last for life. And I think that's something that I did have did cherish there in daily college. That's something that I really take. And one of the things I talked about, how you thrust forward when you want to do when you want to be in a play, or you want to go on stage, or go onto the field, or go on to do some activity. You are given the opportunity. You thrust there, and sometimes you will come good, sometimes you will not. But you have the experience of going through it, and I think that's something that I really cherish. You come out with a lot of confidence, because when you come out, you're ready to, at a very young age, you're able to do that. You're able to face the world at the age of 17 or 18. And when you step into the next phase, and get into the youth phase, where you start to get into your next academic part, or you get to the profession that you choose.
Lovely. So that is a great insight. At this point in time, I would like to remind our viewers and attendees again. Please keep those comments and questions coming into the comment box of this LinkedIn Live. Veteran Spotlight with me, Preeti Chaudhary here. And in the spotlight, we have today Probal DasGupta, who is an author and a successful career transitionist. So he will tell us more about himself as we proceed. For now, our dear friend Colonel Amit Verma would be helping us take all those question and answers. So please, please, please let them keep coming into the comments section right here. With that, Probal, so getting into the courses was a done deal for you, right? So from Delhi College, you went and did your college in Bombay, and then you
Right.
sort of,
Yeah.
yeah, and then from there you went into the IMA in Dehradun. So tell us, I want to now shift gears and take you straight to Dehradun in terms of the course, your life there. How did that happen? And before you do that, please tell us a little bit of why the forces. Was it, like I said, a done deal, or was there anything else that was going through your mind? And then take us through your life at the IMA in Dehradun, please. Over to you, Prabhat.
Yeah. Yeah. So you make career choices in different phases of your life, and that's something that I want to say, that the choice that you make at 21 or is not the choice that you make it 45, is not the choice that you make it 55. So they could be different depending on the context of your life and where you are and what you think and what you want to do for the next few years that you're there. So at that point of time, I did want to, and it was also at a time 92. India wasn't. I mean, I grew up on a lot of stories. My dad went to the army. I wanted to join, so that was one of the main objectives. My career choice at that point of time, and so that's how it was. I wrote the exams. Those days, what used to happen is you wouldn't you take your exam, you want to join, you go and join. There was no internet, there's no other various distractions, there are no other choices, options, and you want to there was much more clarity. So you want to join the forces, you go and join the forces, you take your exams and you join it. That was how it was. And so given that, having grown up on a diet of stories, wanting to join the armed forces, I did. uh, and as I said, over the years, the options have increased, the various choices have increased. But I think if I were to make a choice again, I would still opt for the armed forces because it's a great career to set you up for life. So that was that. And IMA was again a great experience because you go through a lot of the rough and tumble of training, where your personality is deconstructed, then reconstructed, and then you become a commissioned officer at the end of the training. And you go through this entire cycle of 3 terms in the IMA. People there are cadets who come from the NDA who join us in the second term. So it's a mixed bag of different cadets, gentlemen cadets as they are called in the IMA, who come with different backgrounds, military backgrounds I'm talking about, who come from the NDA or direct entries who come to the IMA. So that again is, as I said, every stage of life. One of the things that I learned was the life skills at that point of time. And at IMA, you learn a lot about camaraderie, where you have cosmates, you have cadets who are senior to you, cadets who are junior to you, and again, many of them, you know, you may not be interacting with them subsequently because there are many of them. So, but then you have a certain wealth of experience that you retain in your memory. Also, you have cosmates who you bond with, who you keep in touch with for the rest of your life. And IMA again forms your personality as you step into the shoes as a commissioned officer post your commission. And that's what happened. So in IMA, from IMA I went to the Gurkha Rifles. That's where I got commissioned. 11
Which
Gurkha
brings
Rifles,
me
11 GR. Yeah,
lovely,
yeah,
11 GR, brilliant. So that brings me to the question again as well, Probal. So let's talk about commissioned life. So that will, by and large, tell us what shaped you into the person, that the cadet that came out after being commissioned to the hardcore deployment. I'm sure that has had a deep impact into the various terrains and all over the country in difficult places in peacetime, in difficult times. So please take us through that journey a little bit in terms of your deployments and anything that stands out for you from that particular journey in your life. Over to you, Prabal.
sure, sure. So thank you. So again, an infantry career is is as rich as it can be. All arms and all services have their own various experiences. I can only speak as an infantryman, and given that you have a combination of several uh, postings and several places that you get to see, there's a lot of richness and different variety that you're able to experience, as in the other arms and other services as well. Uh, the aspect about Gurkha Rifles was that when I got commissioned, and this is something that is I must talk about, which is very unique to Gurkhas.
Okay.
and known as one of the greatest fighters, and known as courageous, brave soldiers. Field Marshal Sam Manekshaw, who was himself an officer from the Gurkha regiment, would say that if you're you know he- would talk about the Gurkhas very, very, in a glowing manner. So uh, he would say that if you're talking about courage, and in the aspect of courage, and in the to describe courage, he would say that if you're saying that you would never been afraid, you're either lying or you're a Gurkha. So that's how you would describe the courage of Gurkhas. And right from time immemorial, at various battles and wars, they've had this glorious history. So I was stepping into a battalion which had a glorious history of 1971, where they had been a part of the campaign in Bangladesh. One of the things I remember, and this is something that all Gurkha officers would find affinity with, is that when I went to the battalion, I I realized that people are being called by numbers. In Gurkhas, the troops are called by numbers: 32, 33, 35, 36, Bara, and
What were you?
somebody's
What
at
were
a
you,
zero
by the
zero
way?
seven number. No, no, no. The soldiers, not the officers. So that's how they. I'll tell you why the Gurkha soldiers are named by numbers, are called by numbers,
Sure. Okay.
because and so the names are very similar. Devi Prasad. There will be many Devi Prasad. There'll be Ram Bahadur Pun. There'll be there'll be very similar names. Ram Bahadur, Devi Prasad, uh, Khan Prasad. So there'll be, you'll find three of those, three of the other names, Gyan Bahadur, three Gyan Bahadurs, two Ram Bahadur. So there's a hell of a lot of confusion. So it is a tradition. It is a tradition that in Gurkhas you have numbers, and the soldiers are called by numbers. So when I went there, I was told that there's this Patra, these Patis. So that's I when I asked why are they called by numbers, and this is how it came about, that if you look at the number of if you look at the names, they're so very similar that you find many of them of a similar first name, and there's a lot of confusion on that. So one of the things I learned with the Gurkhas was how when you lead men, you have to be, you know, you have to be one of them in terms of being with them all the time on the ground, doing what they do, as well as making sure that they they watch you, they see how you are, how you conduct yourself. And as a leader, that was my first lesson. And Gurkha troops teach you that you have to, they see you as a leader, they accept you as a leader, but at the same time you have to prove that you are one with your conduct and with your ability to uh, lead them. And that's something that is unique, something that I found, and there's a lot of affection that comes from the troops, and they're very loyal. But as in the first 15, 20 days or a month, they absolutely see how, they wouldn't say anything, but they figure, how good a leader you are, because they've seen a lot. And that's something that you do with the Gurkhas. You do what they do, and you do it as well as they do. My first lessons in leadership was with the troops as a young officer, as a young second lieutenant. Those days they used to be. There was no lieutenant. Later on, the second lieutenant rank was taken away. It was removed. It was people. The cadets, GCs, would directly get commissioned as lieutenants. But those days was second lieutenant and then lieutenant. So it was, and the posting, the first posting was a field posting in the valley. So it was a it was a good experience to spend a lot of time with troops, because when you're on field, you do spend a lot of time with the troops, understanding them. In Gurkhas, as in some of the other regiments, especially in Gurkhas, you learn to speak the language. You speak many languages, so that's something that you will kind of like. So in Gurkhas, you do that. You speak the language, their language, and you interact with in Nepali, and that helps to create a bond, a much more firmer, stronger bond, which again is something that you retain. You learn not the language alone, but the culture, the ways of life of the soldiers. It's deeper. So in a sense, you're able to absorb a lot of what the culture of the troops stand for. And that is something that is very unique, which I learned. And that is a leadership lesson, because leadership is not just about going there and that happens with in all army units, in all armies
Sure.
and services, that you have to be leading from the front, and also you cannot be just going and barking some instructions or orders. You have to be very clear. You have to be the men should feel that you're a part of them. That's something that as a leader you learn, and you have your first lessons in the armed forces. I must say that that's one of the lessons that no other organization, to my mind, teaches it as in as institutionalized a manner as the armed forces does. I'm sure there are institutions which have great leadership lessons, but the institutionalization of leadership is much more deeper and much more settled in the armed forces, and that's something that comes from years and years of honing the leadership skills in the armed forces. So that was then, and of course the peacetime, and then in the in the instructional center, with the younger soldiers, who would come through those the instruction courses, etc., help to understand where they are, what kind of troops do we have, and also have your early lessons as a young leader. And that's so I spent a decade, or close to a decade, in the armed forces, and in the battalion, in the center, in the peace location, in field, the in the northeast as well as the valley. So it was a combination of all kinds of postings in a decade, and that's how it was.
Lovely. That is so nice to hear. I'm sure there'll be a million stories from there which I will have to sit down with you and listen to. But let me take this opportunity once again to remind all the attendees, the watchers, viewers, listeners, please put down your questions and comments in the comment box of this LinkedIn Live Veteran Spotlight with Probal DasGupta. We will be taking live questions, as you know. Amit will help us in a bit, which is coming up very soon. So now, Prabal, all these experiences of being peacetime, being in the field, and so on and so forth, that brings me to the next phase, the transition. Was that a
Yeah.
conscious decision? Did you consciously decide to hang up your boots for a suit, or was it a prolonged sort of a decision? And there's two parts to this question, Prabal. So please help me here. So I need to understand one, whether that was a quick decision or a conscious decision that went on for some time. And the second bit to it is, did you have any proper sort of pointed preparations to help you through this transition? What did you do? So both those, please. Prabal,
Yeah.
all yours.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sure. Thank you. Thank you. So very excellent questions. I think both have the second question has great relevance today, but I'll come to the first one first. So, you know, yes, it was a conscious decision. It was a decision to move out and move into a different sphere of life. Having said that, it was a decision to carry forward what I was doing in a different way, in a different sphere, and as I said, you take a decision at every stage of your life to do what you want to do for the next stage. I had a fantastic career in the armed forces, and I decided to move on and explore the world in terms of the career that lay there. Now, to your second question, those days, and I'm talking about early 2000s, there was no career plan in the armed forces. It has come much later, where you've had the army does provide a year's course, and I'm not very conversant with what's on at the moment, but I believe there are courses in IIM Ahmedabad and courses in different other MDI Gurgaon and some of these other management institutes, and also grants study leave, and depends on when you're coming out of the armed forces. When I was leaving the army, there was no such thing. So you came out like a hot potato. So you're just rolling around, and you just come out and you figure what you want to do. So I at that point of time, that is when I came out, one of the things that I wanted to do, and I always wanted to uh, carry forward, is advanced education, and that's something that I had in mind as well. So when I stepped out, I prepared, and I realized that there's something that I wanted to do outside. I need to arm myself with a higher education, which I was passionate about. I wanted to explore what I could do in the field of education, and go and do that. So I went overseas, and I applied to a few universities, and I got through to Columbia University in New York. I got a scholarship from the Jane Tata Foundation. I remember going for an interview um, to to the Tata office, and I was interviewed by Mr. Julio Ribeiro, who used to be a former commissioner earlier, and very well known super cop, and he was the ambassador of India in Romania, where he was shot. And so Mr. Ribeiro interviewed me, and I it was a wonderful interview, because he asked me what I had. We kept talking about the various experiences, and then I'd made a little video at that point of time, in which I was explaining what I how I did what I did in the previous career in the armed forces, what else did I learn, etc., and how all that matters in the course that I was pursuing, or I had applied for, and I had got admission to. He quite liked the idea, because it was an innovatively made video that I had done. And at the end of the interview, I did show him the video. Eventually, I got the scholarship. There was somebody else. There were two people who got it that year, and including I. And so I packed my bags and went to Manhattan, and that's where I lived. And for a while, I worked, and then I got back. It was good, because again, education, after 10 years of having served in the armed forces, is again you bring your life experiences to the classroom. And what happens, and this is something that I would like to share with veterans who are transitioning, that when you go to a classroom after your 10 years or 20 years or 15 years, whenever you choose to step out, is again a means to understand what the outside life is about. It is a good transitioning spectrum, a platform where you are meeting different people, not as seniors or juniors, but as classmates. Now, that what that happens is that equalizes a lot of things, helps you to learn from other experiences as well, because though I must say that the leadership lessons that you learn in the armed forces are absolutely fantastic, but there are people who bring in different kinds of experiences, and that is a time to absorb those experiences, understand where are they coming from, the context that life brings you in different forms and shapes and sizes. And that's what education does. When you For me, it did help. There was a great experience, because people came with different from different walks of life. There was somebody who had come from Hollywood. He had written the script for American Pie. It was a well-known movie. There was somebody who had been an investment banker, a few of them. There was somebody who had done a research. She'd done research on Pol Pot in Cambodia, and she had spent 2 years doing that. There was somebody who had worked in Africa in some aid programs. A couple of bankers who had worked somewhere. There's some people from World Bank. There was somebody who had worked with NASA. So there was a ballet dancer. So there were various people with different backgrounds, which I felt was rich. and varied and unique. And that's where you, because once you open your vistas of learning, do you pick up various new elements that you can add to your arsenal. And that's what your schooling does. That's what your schooling does when you come with a lot of experience, because you can bring that to the table and you can absorb a lot more and use it for the life that waits ahead of you. So from there, of course, when once you stepped into corporate life, you can bring a lot of various moving parts and elements into the role that you play. So
So,
and then it was corporate life. Yeah, yeah.
sorry, so I was just going to say that you actually did prepare yourself for the next stint, which I think was the right approach for you, that you had decided for yourself, that you are going to be flexible, you are open to be learning new things, unlearning what you have learned in the past, and start off with a clean slate by being fortified with this new learning that you went to the US to get, right? That is something really very relevant, and I think probably one of the right approaches. With that, I am coming to the last question in this conversation, after which we will open up the live question and answers, Probal. So, this question is basically talking about when you came back from the US and stepped into the corporate shoes. So please take us through that journey of yours, and any couple of anecdotes that sort of stand out in terms of again teaching you life skills from this part of your life. After which we will open the live question and answer. So this is one last reminder for everyone out here today. Please put in your questions and comments in the comment box. We will have Amit take them for us and help us with that very, very soon, right after this piece of information that Proval shares with us. Over to you, Proval. Take us through that bit of your journey, please. Thank you.
Right, right. Thank you. So, when you step into the corporate life, you have, after your various experiences, you bring all those, as I said. And I would just step back a little bit to because that informs what the corporate career was like. You know, lessons in life are learned from people who you interact with. So when I was in Colombia, and this is something that I must tell viewers, that the oldest person in my class was somebody who was I think he was 75 or 75 or 76. Now what had happened was that he was a Japanese student. Now he was a part of Emperor Hirohito's forces when the Second World War took place. He was just 16 years old, and he had participated in Second World War. And the American forces came to Japan and took him prisoner. And he was in the prisoners' camp, and then he in the POW camp. And after that, the World War ended, and he was a young boy, 16, 17 years old, or something like that. And he left he was let off after the World War had ended, and he just spent a couple of years in the forces then as a young soldier, um, and then after he had left, his family moved to California, and then the Korean War took place in 1953. He had joined the U.S. Army as an officer then, and they said, "Oh, you know what? He has spent some time in the Second World War. Send him there." So this time he went as an officer in the U.S. Army, and he was posted in the Korean War in 1953. Very interesting because he was a young officer by that time, and then he left after the war, and then he spent some time in Vietnam. He left there, and then he became an entrepreneur. He became an entrepreneur, and he became uh, this. I mean, he did very well. I was counted as one of the the CEOs who'd really done well, and in the field that he embarked on. But somebody told him, and so I said, why did you join this? I mean, you've run through your entire life and you have a great experience, which I'm not sure how the school will add more. So he said, one of the things that he told me is that somebody told him that you've gone through all this, but you don't have a master's degree. So, so he had come to get a master's degree. So there is always something that you'd want to do, And that's something that life teaches us, that and you can always do that. It doesn't matter where you are and which stage of life that you are. And he'd come to do that because, and he was enjoying exchanging and understanding the experiences of others as well, which is fantastic, which is what I was talking about. So in corporate, when I had come in, I had spent some time in school in the master's program, after my armed forces career. So the corporate life again in India had come from the US. It's very different. You have the fortunate part was that I'd worked with I have been working with multinational firms which have had different people with different backgrounds and different nationalities. So that's also helped to understand how people shape their thinking, what they say, how they think. And I've worked in the consulting field. So as a consultant, I the idea is to think on your feet, and something that as an infantry officer I had been trained to do in a different way. So you bring your transferable. You spoke about transferable skills when you're talking, some time back. You bring those skills. You look to find your transferable skills in yourself, and you bring them to whichever field you're working in. So consulting was something that I took to you know, like a fish
Fish
to
to
water. I
water.
think that's something that a fish to water, a duck to water, or whichever way it say, unless the water flows out. So that's something that I enjoyed. Uh, over a period of time, more responsibilities, more uh, engagements, cases, different kinds of clients, different kinds of employees. I think that has corporate life has also taught me how varied life can be, especially consulting field, and that's something that I've really enjoyed. That's very, and I've also liked the fact that it is very much, it's very similar in many senses to the armed forces, because you have different projects, you have different deadlines. Different projects have different deadlines, but the deadlines stay, and you have to work towards your deadlines. You have to work with a team. You have to have clarity of targets. You have to have clarity of action plans. So there are so many things from the armed forces that you bring to the table while you're working in the corporate field, which you can actually execute the way you would in the armed forces, but in a different field. There are things that you can carry forward there. But I must also let veterans know that those who are transitioning, that armed forces has a slightly different orientation. It has a regimented setting. So the regimented setting means that your the ranks you carry, the hierarchical structure that you're in, is quite different than what it is in the corporate setup. uh, though the functioning is similar. So these are two different things. The functioning is similar. You have your action plans, you have your clarity of thinking, which is what you bring from the armed forces. So those are the strengths that you bring. There are aspects that you need to calibrate inside your head. That when you come to the corporate sector, there are things that you rework. And one of the things that you rework is you must remember that you're coming from a regimented setup to a more egalitarian setup with more democratic setup. This is also egalitarian, but it's got its own laid down institutionalized hierarchy, the armed forces. So that's something. When you come to the corporate sector, you uh, one has to shed that part. One has to think afresh in terms of how you want to be interacting with people, because certain things, there are a lot more strengths that in the armed forces that you can carry to the corporate sector. But this is something that I would like to remind viewers, veterans, and I've also kind of gone through that process. And it's important to see the world as with your open eyes, without blinkers. That enables you to learn a lot more and become a good leader. One of the things that I would quickly turn to is the corporate allows you to use your armed forces thinking to navigate, to explore different areas. And that's what set me thinking, that as I said, at 21 you think differently, at 35 you think differently, at and in your mid 40s or late 40s, you think differently. So you can explore a lot of things. You can bring that discipline into play, and you can bring your creativity into play, which are these elements. And that's when few years back, and you go back to the armed forces in some way or the other. So when I decided to write my book, and it's called Watershed 1967, it is a book about about a forgotten victory that India had registered over China in 1967, which changed the narrative of India-China relations. We today talking about India-China, we're watching television, we're reading in the newspapers, and this narrative was set in 1967 with the victory that India had over China. It was not never for 50 odd years. The story was never written. So when I chose to write it, the reason why I'm saying this is another element of the career that one could explore. It's not just the regimented corporate life that one could aspire to explore. You can actually think of doing several things, but bring all those elements, all those strengths into play. Whether it's your discipline, whether it's your ability to think out of the box, whether it's your ability to pursue the passion that you wanted to. So that's something that set me on a journey again to explore the exploits of armed forces and soldiers way back, half a century back, which actually set the tone for India-China relations thereafter. So this is again something that why do you want to pursue it? Because you have learned those life skills that you're bringing to play in different manner, in different facets of whatever you pursue. So
Sure. So
that's how I would put it.
lovely, and those are some amazing insights. And what I have sort of taken away from what we have spoken about in the last 40, 50 odd minutes is that you actually taken learnings from each stage of your life, actually processed it, kept the things that you could learn from, and then casted aside the stuff that was not relevant to you. And that is an ability I think a lot of people, if they internalize and plan or work their life around, would stand them in good stead. So, amazing insight, amazing conversation. Now it's time to say a big hello to our dear friend Colonel Amit Verma, retired, right here with us. And it's time also for the live question and answer. So, one last reminder, people, from now on, it is live question and answers with the help of Amit. If you still have anything in your minds, now is the time when you please put it down in the comment section, and we will take as many as we can. Just a quick tip here that it is practically and humanly impossible to take each and every question. So please reach out to Probal on social media and mention that you are here at this veteran spotlight and that you have something to discuss with him. So please keep that in mind in case your question doesn't come up today, which we will be very sorry about, but please bear with us because there's only so much we can do. So with that, it's all yours, Amit. Over to you. Let's get the question and comments rolling, please. Thank you.
Hi, Probal.
Hi. How are you? Good to see you.
Amazing story, and really inspiring the way you described your transition. And as always, once a Gurkha, always a Gurkha. You had amazing insights and anecdotes from your regimental life also. And the audience and the people that who have been attending and listening to you, they have been absolutely engaged. We have a lot of questions, and that's why I think we will not be able to do justice to all of them. We have hi and hello coming in from Harsh, Lavender, Romil. We have a lot of questions which came in from Pankaj Dev. These are mostly to do with the India-China relations. He's got about four of them. Quite insightful. I have recommended to him that he gets in touch with you later. It'll be an interesting conversation in its own. What I will be focusing on is a question which has come in from Colonel Navinder. He is asking here that when you started your career, did you have someone around you, now that you look back, who you would consider to be a mentor or a guide?
So I think that's a great question, Colonel Lavender. I think uh, so. You at every stage of life, you have different people. Your parents, your father, or your mother remains a constant, And I think I'll put it this way: my father has been an inspiration right from the start. Has been a constant inspiration, at various stages of the life, wherever you are, whether you're in school or whether you're in the army or whether you're in academic life or corporate life, you have people around you, and you want to draw the best out of those that are around you. So yes, the short answer to your question is yes. I think at every stage, I had people. I was fortunate, perhaps, to have people who I could draw inspiration from. I could go to, and I could ask questions. That really helped. The funny, not I mean, the interesting part is the mentors that you have in different times of your life do stay in your minds, in your mind, in terms of how you want to approach a certain problem or a certain issue, because they have influenced you at certain stage in life. My father did all the way through. My teacher in school, or in the army, the officers my commanding officer, or the others who I've interacted with. So yes, and the interesting part is I'm in touch with most of them, I think, at this point of time, who have influenced me at different stages.
Okay, thank you. Tushar is asking about that you recommend to him a book for young leaders. The question specifically is, I want Mr. Prabal to recommend one must-read book for the young leaders. And Prabal, if you would allow me a small plug here, Tushar, you have to read the book
Sure.
that Prabal has written. I have read the book, and I'm lucky that I'm actually meeting the author today. The battle that the Prabal has written about has got leadership imprinted in ways that today's generation would relate to. Audacious, not waiting for instructions, not taking a no from the enemy, and achieving the impossible. That's the story in that book. Please go and read what Prabal has written. And if you really want to pick up another book that's not been written, which I think Prabal will be writing now, is about the Battle of Sundorongchu, in which we had a army general ordering a aviation support to block the enemy at Thagla. We airlifted a brigade in 1987, a heli lift. It's unheard of. And it's unheard of because we never wrote about it. So I think we have one book that Prabal has already written that you should read about leadership. And the next one about General Vedya, I think, if I'm not wrong, would be the one which will come up later, or whenever Prabal is writing it. But the question that I will take on now is coming in from Nisha DasGupta. Prabal, decision making is the key in any career. What would you say that the army instilled in you, which allowed you to deal with dilemmas of decision making in your corporate life? And she goes on to sort of add to it about what is the fear in decision making that you can suggest, and how they can overcome it.
Thank you. One of the the army always talks about the various aspects of planning, doing your action plans, whatever you need to do to take a call, take a decision. The two things that there's one thing that I would talk about here, which is very much underrated but very essential, is clarity. And I think that is something that the army teaches all of us who've been there, and any leader who's been through stages in life, experiences. If one were to draw a lesson, that would be to to obtain clarity in your decision making. The reason why I say this is, in the army, you have hukum. The hukum is a part of laying down what are the steps to be done. Whether you are mounting an attack on the enemy, whether you have to have a Sainik Sammelan, which is basically addressing troops for various things that have happened or going to happen in a battalion or a unit, or whether you have to lay out certain plans for the year, or for the quarter, or for the month. Clarity of thinking is one of the most defining aspects of decision making. Now, I will also draw here a story. Draw in here a story. Colonel Amit spoke about the Watershed, 1967, the book. Now let me pull a story from there, which talks about General Sagat Singh in 1967. And the reason why I say this is, most of the times, um, decision making is all about speed, and that speed is, nobody gives you time that, I will take a decision in 7 days because this looks like a lot complex. They would, decision making has to be sometimes in the spur of the moment, gives you lesser time to respond. So that's why clarity is absolutely important in inside your head, how you're thinking, how you want to achieve things, what is it that you want to achieve, and what do you have in your arsenal, your resources to achieve all of that. When the battle was unfolding in Nathula, the Chinese had the upper edge, and had the edge, and they were pounding the Indian defenses by using their machine guns and all their. They opened up their guns, and it was all of a sudden, and the Indians had the grenadiers, battalion that was there had lost a lot of lives, 30 odd 40 odd lives in the initial 1 hour of firing, 2 hours of firing. What happened then was that Indian artillery was sitting atop a mountain feature, a hill feature, which could the artillery, you have in the artillery, they have OPs who could see the Chinese defenses, and if the Indian artillery were to be brought on to fire on the Chinese, the artillery fire were to be brought on, the Chinese would have got decimated. That was the scenario at that point of time. But General Sagat's hands were tied because the orders for unleashing the artillery bombardment on the Chinese defenses, which would have absolutely destroyed them, could only come from New Delhi. That was how it was. The orders could only come from the PMO. So he had set the message out that, look, I need to get the permission. But he also knew that from somewhere in the folds of the Himalayas and along the LAC in Sikkim and Nathula, if you were to send the message in 1967, when you can imagine when it would go to Delhi and when the decision would come. So there was a dilemma whether you should follow protocol, and which would result in defeat. So that's a decision-making dilemma. Or you would break the protocol and take a call, and you have the protocol here and you have a call. So you break the protocol for a higher calling. So there was, out of the two, which was the higher calling? The higher calling was to protect the territorial integrity of the country and the lives of soldiers, or you protect your protocol, because that is the right thing to do in terms of the laid down instructions, right? Laid down protocol. So it's all very well to speak in retrospective and say, oh yes, that was the simpler thing to do, but I can assure you, in all walks of life, the great leaders are those who attend to their higher calling. And the higher calling is something that is identified when you have clarity of thinking. And that clarity of thinking, therefore, to me, is one of the bedrock of leadership thinking.
Prabhul, that was an amazing anecdote, and the way you explained leadership, I take it that the attendees would have really identified. Because in the corporate world, maybe the dilemmas would not be about life, but they will definitely be about profit. They will definitely be about attaining some aim. And this is the part that you had spoken about earlier, that an army officer or an armed forces officer is able to get things done. It is being about clear that you are going to get things done. You're not going to go back to your boss with a no. You're going to go back either with a solution, or you're going to go back with victory. I think that's what we can take away from what you just said. Kal Narendra had another question which I'll just touch upon. And Kal Navinder, sorry. And even before that, Abraham Cherian, sir, conveyed his regards to you for going in for higher education the way you did. Even he had done a proper MBA from a university and upskilled himself, and that too after 2 decades in the army. So in that case, it was again a understanding that you have to upskill yourself, you have to get a wider perspective. It's all about the context. The more people you meet, the better you are able to clarify your own thoughts. What is it that you want to what is it that you want to do? And here comes in Kal Navinda Narang again. Prabal sir, did you have your moments of self doubt after you started working your way post retirement? If so, how did you overcome that? And I think he's not alone in asking this question. Even I would have posed the same question to you. Please.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Colonel Navinder. I think that's a question that we all face in our lives, um, and that's a question that you know one of the things that the way we look at it, the way we look at any time when you are facing those, is to not the problem is that sometimes we feel that we're not supposed to have any self doubt. So how are we having this self doubt? I think that is something that I think you should set aside, and it's very human to have the self doubt creeping in. The way I think I have faced to it is not to challenge that self doubt, but to accept it and then see uh, what could be the reason. Because you don't fight it, head on, but you need to figure out that well, I have these resources. It's like again looking at your own balance sheet. What are the credits? What are the debits? And you certainly have more than you think you do, and that falling back on all your strengths is the way to to overcome those self doubts. There are certain times that you one of the things, again, an underrated virtue is patience. I think sometimes transitioning from one time to the other, there could be a longer time that happen. People could take a longer time to really transition to go to where they want to, and there could be a lot of patience that is demanded of the officer or of the professional at that point of time. I think you have to simply draw upon the learning, and I go back to the life skills that you learn along the way. Now, army teaches you more life skills than most other professions. I think that is where I would go, to draw upon the positives, the strengths, and as I said, patience is another virtue that you learn to understand and cope with any kind of self doubts. And as I said, um, success and failure, they're all parts of our lives, and sometimes failure teaches you more than success. And I think that is what I've learned as well in life, that you have your success, how to deal with success. How do you deal with failure or setbacks is something that teaches you much better. So if you have your self doubt, I think that's a great time of learning, because that will the way you come out of it will set you up much stronger for the rest of the time to come.
Thank you, Prabal. And I think that is the most important thing for a leader, the moral compass that is guiding you in deciding what is success and failure, because it's all relative, it is all contextual, and it varies. Somebody will be happy with a particular success, somebody may not. And this is going to do about the willingness to take risks. We have a question here from Tushar. Please share one mantra for those who have fear of taking risks. And I think a Gurkha will be perfect to give advice on this.
So fear of taking risks. Well, I think just step out and step out of where you are, and I think that's it. I think what tends to happen is we are consumed by the negative thoughts more than the positive ones. And I think, again, I go back to drawing upon the strengths, the positive things that one has always seen through in life to really overcome any fear of risks. I think it's also overthinking, and we do tend to do that. Nobody can say that I don't overthink. And I go back to Sam Manekshaw's, I digress a little, his line about fear. that if you're fearful of something, if you say that you don't fear anything, you're either lying or you're a Gurkha. So so you will fear risks. It's how to and as I say, don't challenge things. Don't fight in things in a manner that you're always taking them head on. Think calmly. There are things that you can draw upon. There are strengths that you have. And as far as risks are concerned, I think overthinking does make us tend to think about the failures more than success. That's one thing. The second thing is when you're taking any decision, it's important to look at the plan that you have. I think once you have a plan, you have another alternative plan. And I go back to that point of clarity, that once you have clarity in your head that this is what I want to do, and these are the two outcomes of it, whether it's success or it's failure or something else. And if it is failure, this is what it would mean to me. If it is success, this is what it would mean to me. You're able to pretty much hold it in a structure, and that's when clarity helps to identify what would happen if it wouldn't go well, and there you are able to tackle any form of risks much better than if you were to just think of it in your head and try to go head on without classifying it into the manner in which you take it on, and the plans that you'd have.
I think
I
that
don't know. I
about
hope that makes sense.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, Probal. And that closes in the Q&A we had. There are many more questions out there, and I would request the attendees, as Preeti told them earlier, get in touch with Probal. Especially, there are quite a few questions about what the India-China relations will be. That's from Vishal in 2031. Vishal, I'm pretty sure that we don't know what's going to happen 1 month hence. So going about a decade ahead will be a bit difficult, and you'll definitely need to get in touch with Probal for that. And with that, Preeti, back to you.
Thank you very much for that, Amit. So, with that, people brings us to the end of the live question and answers. Before we close the evening officially, I do have one question from Probal myself, but before I do that, here's a couple of reminders again. As we keep saying time and time again, please do reach out to Probal on LinkedIn with a personalized message if you want to dive deeper into any of his life story, his learnings, his book, his future, his past, his present, whatever it is, please do reach out. He's open to talking to you. He would be able to answer a lot of unanswered questions for you in terms of transition, in terms of how and what to look for in a corporate career, how to adjust, not adjust, be an outlier, be whatever you want to be. So, with that, I would come back to you, Probal, with just one basic question. As a parting comment, please, I would like you to spell out a couple of pieces of advice for the veterans in career transition at this moment in time. Couple of bullet points of what they should not be doing in this phase of their life, and couple of bullets on what they should do to make this transition smoother for themselves. All yours, Probal. Thank you.
Right. Right. Thank you. So let me start with what they should not be doing, so that we end on a positive note. And what they shouldn't be doing, what tends to happen, and this is something that is not just with the armed forces, can be with any other profession, more so with armed forces, because it's very much regimented as an institution of a unique kind. So you when you come out, there are certain ways of implementing things. And what we tend to do is we start thinking that those are the only ways to implement, only ways to function. And I think that is one thing that I would think, to not think that that is the only way to function, because there are other ways, and other uh, uh, corporates have a certain system, a certain functionalities, certain processes, certain cultures. So I would say, uh, do not be do not close yourself, open yourself. And the second thing is, when you hang your uniform, you hang your epaulets as well. So when you come out, that is something that you shouldn't play too much in the head, because that's something that uh, leaving them, when you say hanging your boots, you hang your boots. You don't walk with your boots. So I think that's something that, I don't know if I'm making sense, but that is something that essentially we need to, my advice to veterans is to have that clearly sorted in the head, that this is what it is. That don't shut your mind. Don't carry your boots to work, because those you hung. Now, when you go to work in the corporate sphere and in a civilian life, what you should do is the other thing: open up your mind. So you can absorb different experiences, interact with different kinds of people. I think it's a beautiful experience. And the second thing that you should do is to give to the world what you have learned. And there are so many things that you can give, so many strengths, so many of them: your leadership, your interaction, your conduct, your ethos. I mean, we've not spoken about it: the integrity, the ethos. There are so many things that you bring in: the clarity of thinking, the ability to dissect, the ability to structure your thinking, all of these strengths that you have. It's important that you lend it to society outside, because the society will only benefit and become richer for it by way of your bringing these strengths out from the armed forces, along with you, and making the society richer and much more purposeful. I think those are two things that I would think that anybody should do, and that's how it is. And the journey, and you're all set for a great journey.
Thank you very much for that, Probal. With that, I have absolutely tremendously enjoyed this conversation. So, first of all, thank you very much for being here today. I would like to thank the attendees for bearing with us, for
Thank
listening
you.
to us, for imbibing whatever we had to say with in the past hour and plus or so. Thanks to our partners, Echo Events, for this live stream. And once again, a reminder: please reach out to Probal, reach out to any of us if you have any help, any requirement, anything that we can do for you. We are right here for you. With that, with my co host, Colonel Amit Verma, retired, and Probal DasGupta, this is me, Preeti Chaudhary, signing off from this exciting and engaging edition of Veteran Spotlight. Until the next time, take care and bye for now. Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you.